All right, let's hear it for Mara.
Hello, everyone. What do Nokia, Kodak, and Toys R Us have in common? They sunk. They sunk. Was it the iceberg? No, it was not the iceberg that sank the Titanic. It was ignored warnings, it was arrogance and no preparation. And we do the same in business. Today, our journey is going to take us looking back at the Titanic and seeing how disasters are created and disasters are averted. Lesson 1, warnings. If you've seen the movie Titanic, it was quite accurate historically. Some of us don't realize how many times Titanic was warned, and the answer is at least 6 times. They knew there were icebergs in the area where they were traveling. And the last and most important warning was not prefixed with MSG, Master's Servicegram, which was required to have acknowledgement from the captain. That wasn't there because the passing ship, the Californian, interrupted the telegraph operator. And he wrote back, shut up, I am working, Cape Race. Cape Race, Newfoundland, they had to get messages to the high first-class people in New York before Titanic went out of range. And what's the cost of ignoring those warnings? We know over 1,500 people lost their lives. Businesses also get signals, market shifts, new competitors, but we often don't really listen because listening means having to change. No practice. What? Well, the Titanic never practiced. Has anyone been on a cruise? Yeah, okay, if you've been on a cruise, you do a muster drill. You get your life jackets, you march down, and you know what to do if there's an emergency on the ship. They had new ways of launching lifeboats that were not practiced. There was no one in charge of passenger safety. The crew had no time to gel. And that result, no one knew what to do. And several of the lifeboats were broken trying to launch them. And there was no one in charge of communication. So who's supposed to say we hit an iceberg and let people know? It was absolute chaos. In business, we often don't practice reinvention because we think of change as an event or something to get through so we can be stable. Change is a muscle. Either we use it or are you going to freeze when it comes time to act? Past success. The Titanic had some of the most advanced, experienced folks working on the ship. And the second in command, his last name was Murdoch. He was known and chosen for his cool head, his quick thinking, and his past success of averting disasters. He was on the ship the Arabic, and he overrode a command from a superior and steered left and avoided an oncoming ship, inches away. But did his past success save him or save the Titanic? It did not. And if we draw this back to learning, he relied on that past success and wasn't curious and open to learning. Confidence became complacency. Our past wins can blind us, and success can become our anchor where we're not able to move. No binoculars? That's crazy to me. Today, I don't think anyone would go out on open waters without having that basic tool. Perched high up in the crow's nest, they had a phone that went right down to the bridge. They had a bell to ring if they saw something. What they didn't have were binoculars. Because in a last-minute leadership change, Officer Blair was asked to leave the ship and sit it out, and they brought someone else on. So he was so sad and deflated. He was going to miss this historic trip. Keys to the binoculars cabinet were in his pocket, and he walked off. Now, it is thought that they had axes and they could have broken into the wooden cabinets or broken the lock, but nobody made the call. And one of the lookouts, Lee, he would insist, he survived the disaster, and he would insist if they would have had those binoculars, they would have seen the iceberg in time to stop and avert the disaster. They couldn't see danger if they tried. Our blind spots can be ignored data, silenced voices afraid to speak up in a meeting, untested assumptions. Well, it's really the iceberg, right? The iceberg caused the disaster. It wasn't the iceberg. The iceberg was the final blow. The Titanic sank from a culture of denial. And companies don't fail from disruption. We've had constant disruption lately in the past several years. Companies fail from ignoring it and failing to act. This is called the Titanic syndrome, and it is a corporate disease or organizational disease. It can even be an individual disease where arrogance, not being prepared, and assumptions paralyze you from acting and ignoring the warning signs. So this is the cycle of a company. Historically, you have a startup, you grow a little bit, you mature, you decline. Hopefully, when you're maturing, you've made some money, you draw another S-curve and you reinvent and succeed. The questions we need to ask ourselves, the most important first question, is it why? I think I've illustrated a few of the whys. It's not what to reinvent. It's not who or how. That's not the most important question. The most important question about reinvention is when. When do we reinvent? You want to reinvent after you've made some money, had some success, and can invest back into your business. Keep it afloat while preparing for tomorrow. What we found out is that when companies try to reinvent on a decline, only 10% are successful and stay afloat. That's the sweet spot. Okay, here's what reinvention should look like. Historically, we had about 75 years before we needed to reinvent, right? And think back like our parents or grandparents. So halfway through is 37 and a half years. That's a whole career. Many people went through their career without even having to experience a reinvention. 1989, a couple big things happened. One, the fall of the Berlin Wall, which opened up so many countries that were communists coming out of communism, the former USSR, and that really started globalization. And the other is the internet. Started really getting traction and was being tested in universities and other organizations. That cut the reinvention time to 15 years. So 7.5 years, that's pretty quick. And I would guess a lot of us in here have experienced that with different companies, the need to reinvent. What is it now? And the answer is it depends on your industry. Some companies are finding that they need to reinvent every 18 months. Halfway through is 9 months. That's faster than budget cycles. How are we doing strategic planning? How are we preparing our organizations to thrive during the chaos? Most of the change management tools and models that were developed were to get us through the change back to stability. But that's not the world we live in any longer. We need to thrive and be agile and navigate the turbulence that is, it's just going to be the next thing. It's COVID, it's tariffs, it's what have you. Oh my goodness. Here are some victims of Titanic syndrome. Did anyone have a Nokia phone? Well, yeah, woo, Nokia. I loved my Nokia phone, right back in like 98 or something like that. They had the market on mobile phones, and they dismissed touchscreens from Apple. That's a niche. People aren't going to want that. What, right? Blockbuster. Some of you may know this story. They had a meeting, someone came into their office and wanted to partner and maybe sell their company and mail DVDs. Laughed out of the CEO's office. That was ridiculous. They had stores, they were not going to bend there. Well, Netflix was mailing DVDs. Then they decided, oh goodness, we need to stream others' content. And now they're creating their own content and winning Oscars and Emmys, right? I'm excited to see if Netflix can keep up their reinvention. Kodak. Did you guys know that Kodak, they invented digital photography in their labs, but they were so reliant on the revenue that came in from the film that they let it go, and that did not go well for them. They ignored the warning signs there. Polaroid is another company that relied too long on analog. It's kind of coming back as a cool thing at weddings, but. And then Borders. Borders was warned. They refused to invest in their e-commerce. And Amazon was this online bookseller company, and whoa. They went from selling books to redefining how we do e-commerce and how we ship and supply chain. They created what we can now look at as arenas. Like, who would have thought, back in the day that Amazon would be a competitor to maybe UPS or FedEx, different, it's arenas, and it's being able to look out and see not just our competitors that we've defined, but what else is going on. I haven't said AI, but I know, Okay. This is a model that, where do we start? This is the Toto model, today, tomorrow. And if we go to the bottom left corner, it is the Titanic. We only see disaster when it hits us, right? We're too big to fail. We could never. We're Blockbuster. We've got 2,000 plus stores across the United States. On the bottom right side, it's blind idealism, wishing for tomorrow, thinking everything's gonna be okay, have the rose-colored glasses on, and you're destroying today. Where do you guys think you are in your organizations? A lot of people like to say, oh, we're firefighting. That's not too bad. We're firefighting. Well, that's a short-term fix, and the short-term fix can destroy your long-term future, right? People get burned out firefighting if you're in constant firefighting. So where you want to be is solving today, doing well today, and building tomorrow. That's creating a culture of reinvention. So reinvention is not going to happen on its own. Reinvention isn't a department, it's a mindset. It's a routine, and it's not optional, it's not one time. It's looking at the tools that we're using, keeping the best, and redesigning to stay relevant in the future. The Titanic did not sink because of an iceberg. It sank because it thought it couldn't. So will you wait to feel the impact of hitting, or will you lead reinvention?